Why have I quit my job? Why have I, bought a van? And why am I going to drive around the country? Well, I'm passionate about the idea that you need to be heard. And I want to stitch these stories together across the states. We're going to find the commonalities, and it's going to be really an amazing experience, and I look forward to you joining me on the jar. Hey everybody, welcome back to Mental Health Today. It's your host, Ken Stearns, and just a beautiful day here in Moab. I'm on my little journey with the jar. You just saw the introduction video, is me kind of pontificating on what might be the common thread on my journey across 111 cities and interviewing 444 people. And as if you follow the show a little bit, that was mental health. And so in January, taking a break from the road, I started a nonprofit called the Jar Foundation, and also started this podcast to really understand how people get into this business, how people are in here helping. Just a great conversation with Steven, our next guest, before we got on, and we were talking about people end up in this space because somebody they love ends up in a mental health journey, or they have their own journey. And this is just a really interesting thing for me in this space. And it's kind of why I started. I ended up on listening to so many people's journeys, and I wanted to better understand the crisis and what people are doing about it, and if possible, how I can help. And Steven, welcome to the show. Thanks for carving some time out of your day to be a guest. Much appreciated.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we were kind of talking earlier, Steven, maybe you can start off I love starting off by just kind of getting right to, who you are today and what you're doing in the mental health space. And then we'll kind of, talk a little bit about that and how it's important or why it's important. And then maybe we'll kind of slowly step back a little bit into your personal journey.
Sure. Absolutely. So currently, I am working in investor relations for a company called Motif Neurotech.
Okay.
Motif sits on the brain-computer interface and kind of deep tech side of this mental health industry at large. Where people way smarter than me at the company are working on creating a nanotechnology that actually gets implanted into the skull just below the scalp, above the brain. And this, yes, I see the look on your face.
Wait, what? Hold on. Yeah. If you're driving a car, pull over right now.
Yes. So it's a brain-computer interface. You've heard of Neuralink probably, or some of your listeners have that kind of stuff. Motif is creating a small nanotechnology the size of a pea. It's going to sit just below the scalp, above the brain, or above the dura of the brain, which is like in the skull. And what that does is it performs a treatment called transcranial magnetic stimulation, called TMS. It's a pretty common treatment for people with treatment-resistant depression or other mental health disorders that are resistant to treatment. And it's used in that way with a lot of great clinical success in the clinics. But you essentially are sitting in this large hair drying apparatus, right?
Yes.
So Motif is trying to miniaturize and kind of portabilize that technology so that people can do this treatment at home and not have to drive to a clinic. So that's the mission we're working on, and I'm just really happy to be a part of it. I'm helping them do their seed round right now.
Wow, that's wild technology. I kind of want to dive on that a little bit. How close is it radio, magnetic, or electrical? What kind of impulses, or how do you deliver the message to the brain? Okay.
Sure. Yeah. It's electromagnetic stimulation. And like I said, it's been clinically proven using like a larger apparatus where you're essentially doing, it's different than direct brain stimulation. And I won't go any further into that because I'm not the engineer or the science.
You and I shouldn't be talking. You and I shouldn't go there.
I know a guy you could talk to though. So the long and short of it is they've miniaturized this common treatment to be portable, where you basically wear a cap, and the cap is the electronic source, and it powers this module through a magnet, essentially, and transfers the power and creates the stimulation of different parts of the brain. And what we're seeing is with treatment-resistant depression, which is the first ailment we're going to be targeting in our clinical studies, is primarily reacting in the prefrontal cortex, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. However, depression is a really network effect, so we're trying to stimulate lots of parts of the brain to enable just a more executive function. So think of getting out of bed in the morning and doing basic tasks. These are things that people with treatment-resistant depression can't even do, almost a catatonic type state. So we're trying to get people from 0 to 1.
That's, I had a gentleman on the show not too long ago that ended up with electric shock therapy, treatment resistant. And, I mean, the next, like after that, what happens? Lobotomy. I mean, he was at the end of his, right. And lucky for him, I mean, he only went to a few sessions, not really helping. And he ended up with a different path, which he found treatment. But man, I mean, you're really taking, I mean, these are the 0 cases, right? 0 functionality. Those are hot. Is this treatment helping someone function, or is there also repair? Because I think some of the electromagnetic people I've talked to, they say it actually repairs the brain.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely both. And with TMS, there typically is an 11-month relapse period. So it's providing the longer term. The treatment is providing more care for a longer period of time than some other methods that maybe fix a symptom but don't fix the core.
Right.
And what we're trying to do is provide an option that going to a clinic doesn't become a barrier to entry for getting the treatment more frequently. So we're going to try to decrease relapses and increase the ability to use this treatment more readily and more effectively, more cheaply, by having it already implanted and putting a cap on, so you can do this 6-week treatment more frequently.
That is fascinating. And where are you guys? Is there a creator of this? Is she the founder on the team?
Our founder is amazing. His name's Jacob Robinson. I'll probably misspeak on his credentials, but he went to Cornell and then to Harvard, and now he's a professor at Rice. And he studies electrophysics and has ended up in neuroscience through the creation of this miniature implant that doesn't have a battery inside of it. And what that allowed us to do was miniaturize this incredibly small so that the procedure is incredibly minimally invasive, a 20-minute outpatient procedure that can be done by pretty much any neurosurgeon. So it's not a deep implant. We're not going in the brain. And that's really the rub here, right? Because that barrier to entry, like you talked about, even if someone's at the end of the ropes, it's still terrifying to have something implanted in your skull.
That's a bridge for me to go across.
Totally.
I think Neuralink sounds very invasive. I mean, I think they're
more invasive.
I think they cut a square out of your skull, from what I understand. So they have to get really in there. But this is obviously much, much different.
Yeah, and it's just been so cool to get associated with this company. I have a biology background, but I have been in cannabis for the last 10 years. So my transition into a really direct mental health associated company that's like doing something to try and solve issues, rather than cannabis, which is a wellness supplement, definitely has a lot of medical benefit, but has recently become much more like consumer product, more like alcohol, more like some of these other industries that people consume for all kinds of reasons. So it's been a dream come true for me to be associated, affiliated with a company doing real medical technology work.
Yeah, what's your work like? What are you doing for the firm now? You said you're helping find money.
We're doing a $15 million seed round. And that is to facilitate clinical trials and basically we've proven already that the treatment with this implant can do the same thing as TMS in a clinical setting. We just haven't proved that it's the same efficacy in treating depression or treating different ailments. So that's kind of the next phase for the company's growth.
Interesting. How easy is it to find money right now in mental health? I mean, I would assume right now that there are people finding you, and I could be totally wrong on this. You know what I mean? I would imagine at this point, like, people should be finding startups and smart companies. There must be people with lots of millions willing to throw $5 million here and there.
I would love to say that. I think it's turning around,
Yes.
but I think the broader economic turmoil that
Mm,
our country's in is
yeah.
affecting all sources of capital for all sources of good
Yeah.
ideas and good tech, and ours is no different. I think that the investors and the capital that we've seen in the space, or at least I've seen in my short time working, is that the people that do want to invest are incredibly passionate. They're incredibly knowledgeable. They know the
Yeah.
tech,
Yes. Yeah.
which makes it really good in some ways when you find someone who's completely aligned. And it's also challenging because there's a big learning curve.
There's a big learning curve, especially on what you're doing. And if
Yeah, it's
they're
really esoteric and it's scary, right? So trying to convince someone that it's minimally invasive, for example, they can't understand the product's market fit. That people feedback we've been getting is like, well, how do you know that people are going to want to get a small hole drilled into their skull? And we're trying to combat those things by talking to interventional psychiatrists and people that subscribe these treatments like TMS or like DBS or electroconvulsive therapy, like you mentioned.
yeah.
Um, People at the end of the line want their psychiatrist to guide them to something that is going to help. And we
Yes.
know that this kind of therapy is going to help. And that's why we're targeting something that has such a severe need for a last ditch treatment, and then working
Okay.
backwards into more brain wellness
Okay.
applications.
Yeah, that I mean, look, your solution's not going to be for everybody, even when it's fully going. Um,
Mm-hmm.
when I talk to people though, when you are in pain, I think when you've been on every drug in the book, and your therapist and your doctor can't figure out the cocktail, and you've been through 4 or 5, I would imagine if there's something, especially it's not a drug, you're not going to have this thing for life, right? You're not, probably the tech will only get better. And if it's like the other treatments, it'll end up helping heal your brain. So I would imagine
Absolutely.
it's not a terribly difficult sell. If I was in that state, I'd be like,
No.
yeah, yeah,
And
okay.
what we've seen when we talk to interventional psychiatrists is that they really believe that the end game here, as neurotech continues to improve and drug
Yep.
applications for mental health continue to improve, we understand more about these treatments. There's going to be like stratification of consumers or patients, I should say, and what they want to do. Right. So, do they want to
Mm-hmm.
start with taking an SSRI? Do they want to jump into psychedelics? That's going to be a small subset of the population. We've gotten a lot of
Yep.
pushback saying, well, isn't everyone just going to take mushrooms at some point and heal
No,
themselves?
no,
It's
no.
not a one size fits all, like anything in this world, right? People have
Like everything is
preferences.
not right. Right.
Yeah, some people might trust an implantable, computerized device more than taking mushrooms on a really, broad example there. So we see it as like it's not a need to eat the whole market. We want to provide real therapy and give real results to people that desperately need the treatment. And it's
Mm.
not, and it's going to work for some. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, I think it's very clever to start with this really treatment resistant population. You're going to get a lot more traction. You're going to get the conversation. I think
I
at
think
least you'll get
so.
the conversation with the therapist. Yeah. How did you end up in the space? What happened? How did you end up? How did you end up here? Like we all ended up. We all
A
have a
crazy
story.
question. We definitely all have our story. My road into wanting to be involved in the mental health industry really started with my own personal experience. I lost my dad to
Mm,
suicide at 18, right before I went to college.
man.
And I was on a mental health track after that. I wanted to figure out how we could provide solutions. My dad didn't really see a way out of what he was dealing with.
Hmm.
And as I struggled with survivorship of someone losing someone to suicide, I realized that when you get depressed and when you have mental health issues, it's really hard to see a way out a lot of the time. So I can only
It's
imagine what magnitude he was suffering. So with that, I wanted to get into space. And like a really angsty freshman in college who just went through this and was really passionate, wanted to dive right into research. I was a pre-med when I went to college.
okay.
I got turned down from a couple labs. I was trying to study bipolar disorder, and you got a lot of red tape as a freshman. They're like, rise to the ranks. Maybe as a junior, come back and work in the lab. And I was like, I want to make an impact now. So I
Oh
got
man.
frustrated with the traditional track, like a lot of people, and started looking around. And I found the cannabis industry had just been starting. This is like 2011, 2012, when
Oh, great
legalization,
timing. Yeah.
yes, yeah, legalization had just been passed in Colorado for rec. Medical had been around for a few years. And I decided to jump into that industry. So I flew out to Colorado on a whim, and went to a conference. There was a bunch of 200 people in a church back then, and now there's 20,000 people in a convention center in Vegas. So that industry exploded, and I kind of got in at the right time.
Whoa!
And yeah, nuts. So I interned for an edibles company. Moved out to Colorado, got a $500 gas stipend, an unpaid internship, and had a blast. And it's been a crazy road since then. I fell in love with Denver, settled up here, and since then I've been working in the industry in lots of different parts of the supply chain. Most notably, kind of like, oh, sorry, yeah, you want to go?
No.
Oh yeah. I ended up starting a company called Shy Farms, which was a CBD supply chain company. We ran a 300-acre farm down in southern Colorado, and that was really my kind of first realization that I thought recreational cannabis was kind of going on a consumer product track, and really wasn't. It wasn't really aligned with my why.
Yeah.
My why was wanting to solve and help with mental health issues, and really wanted to be at a company that was making impact towards that why. So I ended up in the CBD side of the cannabis industry, which was much more medically focused at that time.
Yes.
And we ended up having a supply chain business that was really successful. And then COVID happened, and like everyone, it changes everything. That company shut down, and it was the right time to, based on where that industry was at. And also, my mental health suffered like many other people's did during COVID, right? Loneliness epidemic became a thing. All these different, COVID life crises of like, what am I going to do with my life? What do I want to do next? Is my current life serving me? All these types of things. So with that, I started to see a shift of like wanting to track back to my why. And that led me into the psychedelic realm. A lot of people in cannabis moved to psychedelics and are moving to psychedelics because of this kind of consumer product versus medical application divergence in cannabis. So I ended up there, and that's what ended up leading me down the road to Motif, through some venture capital firms that I knew of that were also like former cannabis moving to psychedelics. And Motif was invested by one of them. So it led me to finding Jacob, and we hit it off. And I think something that we bonded on was this idea that there isn't a one-size-fits-all treatment for everyone, right? Cannabis isn't going to do it for everyone. Some of the people that might, even in my own life, like cannabis used to be so therapeutic for me in college. And as I've gotten older, it creates anxiety, now takes it away, right? So treatments that may have worked at one point in your life might not work later.
I just love that, and stuck on that one moment when you said, I had a edibles company internship.
Just wrapping chocolate bars. Yep.
I mean, just that's just an amazing statement for me, just to hear somebody say that. I had to think like how excited I would have been if I was 22 years old or 20. Might have been about 20 at the time.
I have a light story that I like to tell about like my second week on the job there.
Right.
This is back in the day where this is back in the day. You already know what I'm going to say. Research and development team. I'm sitting in a boardroom at the company.
Oh my God, the R&D team. Really? There's an R&D. Can I join?
I was going to say, you're a 22-year-old post-college kid. You're not going to volunteer for the research and development team. So I'm in this room. We're testing out a new Tootsie Roll formulation, and I take a tiny, tiny bit because I know myself, my tolerance, and I know what that's going to do. Take a tiniest little bit, wait 15 minutes, and I'm like, it's like 5:30 at night. I'm like, I better drive home because this is going to hit me soon. I'm going to go home. Let's go.
I better get to a safe space. Right.
I made it 3/4 of the way, and I'm in my neighborhood trying to get in. And I was so nervous about making left turns that I made right turns all the way home. And I'm just circling around where I need to go by making rights. And I have to fight the traffic. And it took me, an extra 20 minutes. It's so funny. So I'm just cracking up to myself. Like, this is working at edibles company. So
the Tootsie Roll was a hit.
It was a big hit, right? Too big of a hit.
Yeah, too big of a hit. Too big of a hit. Oh, that is too funny. That is too funny. I had my own slight edibles diversion. Well, we got some time. I don't want to name names because I don't, I don't know how that goes. But a friend of a friend of a friend, a friend of a friend of a friend works for a company, actually here in Utah, and it's a large, I think it's either state owned or federally kind of licensed, where the kind of THC they're using is transportable across state lines. I didn't quite understand it. It's
Okay. Yeah,
it's a
Delta
diff
8 probably. Yeah.
it might have been Delta 8 is maybe what it was, or some other thing, or some other federally licensed piece. Maybe that's Delta 8.
Mhm.
Anyway, I ended up with a giant Ziploc baggie of the rejects. And the problem was that this person could not really remember for obvious reasons, could not remember which color represented which dosage.
Oh dear.
It took me some figuring out. Uh,
Trial by
as,
fire.
as luck would have it, apparently I overdosed and left 3/4 of the bag in a refrigerator in some hotel room in
Yeah.
Wyoming.
Yeah. You're like,
So
I don't want to do those ever again.
to and that was God's hand for sure. And
Yeah.
but to the poor maid that found those and brought those and thought she found a whole bunch of sweet gummies. God bless her and her
I
family
hope she
for
knew
the
what those
next
were, and I hope it
week.
was a great time. Yeah, like I just want to push on that for 1 second because you bring up a really great anecdote that so many people have had experience where they accidentally take too much and they have a
Yes,
bad
yeah,
experience. Dosing is a
yeah,
huge
not
thing.
funny.
It happened through cannabis. No, but
Yeah,
it is funny, but it's teachable, right? Because we could prevent this by making products that
yeah,
are safe and educational. Like cannabis had that world, and we're out of that era now where cannabis products are dosed, regulated. People know what they're getting.
yeah,
People can
yes,
rely on that dose. Same thing is going to happen in psychedelics. These treatments need to be standardized. These treatments are still unproven. Like we need more
yeah,
research around contraindications. If you're going to have a bad experience, what your tolerance is for in edibles
mm,
milligrams for that case. I find it really important because I think like I'm glad that your experience ended up laughable. Mine did too. A lot of
yeah,
people don't always have that luck, right? And they have a bad experience that triggers them and takes them into
mm,
that next phase where they're trying to heal and they maybe take a step back.
yeah.
Um,
That's
a
bad.
lot of
That's
it's
bad.
reversible, but it's tough, and it really just I want to hit that point home for like viewers and people that are in the space of like just because these treatments have amazing efficacy and do work, it always work for everyone, and we gotta. There's a lot more to be done in our industry of like individualized treatments and what dose and what kind of medicine is going to work for everyone.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation. Like you said, each person's going to have a very, very different tolerance, especially when you start getting into psychedelics.
Oh yeah,
And then measuring. It's very difficult to measure psychedelics. Strength. I would guess. I don't know what part of the mushroom. How that works. For example, psilocybin. Until it's maybe they're going to end up with synthetic. I guess I don't quite
well
know.
we're still learning about the endocannabinoid system, right? And that's been something that we've known about since the 70s, right?
Mm,
And as we know that system, and we're still trying to figure out how endocannabinoids or synthetic cannabinoids affect our bodies. Same conversation with any of the psychedelic
yeah,
chemistry, right? What's the biochemistry there? What areas of the brain body is infecting? What are the
yeah. Each person,
contraindications?
each person, very different. Um,
Yeah,
what do you think? I mean, this is the interesting stuff. Is as the I've interviewed a few people in the psilocybin space talking about this now the tour guides. For lack of a better description,
sure.
right? So a tour, someone to help. If you want to if you want to go down that route, you'll have a therapist will help you find source some material and then also make sure that you've got a great trip. Very interesting. What's next? I mean, you guys are doing kind of what's next. As you go around and
Yeah,
talk to you must be learning from investors because you're pitching to investors and they're being pitched. Are you hearing
yeah.
anything
We're in
else
it.
interesting that you're hearing, or even stuff
Yeah,
around, cannabis or even hallucinogens? Any other kind of modality
sure.
that you're hearing people are poking around?
There's there's a couple. It's a great question. Let's start. I'll just take you through all of them.
Yeah, yeah. What are
We're
you
seeing
seeing?
Yeah, we're seeing a couple things. We're seeing neuromodulation, obviously, is the space that I'm
Okay,
in, and that's
a
becoming more prevalent. A
a
lot of
lot,
good
and I
research happening.
It's
Sorry, yeah,
good stuff. It's just good stuff. I'm just saying, I love it,
amazing
and it's
stuff.
good stuff.
It's amazing stuff. It's high tech. We're miniaturizing
Yeah.
these devices. We're making it more approachable. We're making the procedures less invasive, all that kind of stuff. And the treatments, we're like learning more about how these treatments affect the brain. Then there's the psychedelic realm. The psychedelic realm is pretty amazing in what they're innovating on right now, because they're looking at non-psychedelic, what do they call it? Non-psychedelic plastogens. I think it's plastogens. And what that basically is like psychedelics are creating neuroplasticity, which allows us to kind of like recode our thinking and create new connections. So can we create chemical compounds that do the same plastic effect to the brain without the psychedelic experience? Like we were talking about earlier, like someone tripping on mushrooms might not feel safe to them. So
Yeah.
is there chemistry we can provide to give the same experience neurologically without the
With
psychological event? You know,
understand.
that one's really cool. And then there's a merging that's happening that I was listening to Andrew Huberman talk, who I'm sure everyone knows, at MAPS conference, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. I was in Denver in June. He was talking about combining neuromodulation and brain-computer interface with psychedelics, right? Because what we're seeing in psychedelics is psychedelics are more effective when combined with therapy. That's how we're doing all of these clinical studies.
Yes.
Psychedelics in a vacuum and psychedelics plus treatment. So he's saying, what if we do psychedelics and then psychedelics plus treatment and psychedelics with neuromodulation and treatment? Can we see an additive effect? And so far, like, it looks to be additive, right? It looks to be a better than the sum of its parts kind of combination when you're working all these things together. And that makes sense. Like treating a holistic person through lots of
Makes
different means
sense.
to treat a brain that we barely understand. There's going to be a lot of things at play. So I think that's really the cool thing, is like we're combining techniques and resources, to try and deliver even better medicine.
Yeah, you've got medicine, you've got healing through this. So you got the medicine, being the psilocybin or whatever. It could be ketamine, it could be a number of things probably. So you've got that. You've got the treatment, you've got that conversation coming from the therapist, right? And then you've got the actual, you've got the healing part, the actual physical healing through the device. Wow. I mean, that seems like a very good approach.
It'd be a really interesting triple threat. Yeah. So I'm sure we're going to see, that's my guess based on what I've been hearing, is lots more studies in that world, lots more clinical work, combining treatments.
Imagine one day you end up going into a kind of a brain clinic, and you go through some tests, and eventually you end up with some kind of, a little bit of a diagnosis, and they put you in some machines and talk to a few people, and maybe you get some drugs, maybe you don't, maybe you get a machine, and you get a tune-up.
One thing we look at with Motif on our long-term roadmap, this is 10 years out, but what we're looking at is these implantable devices as like Whoop bands, for lack of a better term. Like the Whoop band monitors heart rate, it monitors everything going on physiologically. This chip can send feedback on how the brain is operating back to your phone, to your psychiatrist, and you have a brain score, right? You know what the fitness and health of your brain is at any given time, because you're getting activity and you're translating that data. And then we can create individualized treatments based on that. And maybe that looks like memory increase, maybe that looks like mood stability. Like it doesn't have to be necessarily treating something dire, right? It could just be monitoring and modulating, basic homeostasis. So
is there any talk that you guys think you can improve brain function, like on a normal, like a normal, super air quotes on normal? So a person who's allegedly functioning, above
normal.
at a whatever normal is pace. Is there some thought, or have you, you must be sitting in the meeting sometimes and going, brainstorming and going, do you think this will have like a positive impact to somebody who feels good already?
Attention, memory, the basic mood, these basic functions of our brain. I could absolutely see a future where this type of technology does that. How close is that? To be seen.
Yeah, I think this Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all some kind of electrical something's going on in the brain, right? That's misfiring. Okay, it's shrinking a little bit, but why is it shrinking? There's
Yeah,
got
and
to
those are
be,
degradative conditions, right? So over time they worsen. So if
yeah,
we look at it like this type of treatment could be preventative in a way and stave it off before it gets too bad,
yeah,
definitely a possibility.
yeah, and it just those things. I think anybody listening, if you haven't heard the Joe Rogan, Elon Musk conversation around, um, what is his device again? The
Neuralink.
Neuralink. Yeah, if you haven't heard that, and I would imagine their website's got great stuff as well. But it's a great, fascinating conversation they had. I think it was the second interview, but really interesting, talking about the what they had hoped it would do, and I think they now got trials going. I think they did finally get approved for a trial. Um,
I believe so. There's lots of companies in
yeah,
the space too in neurotech that are doing some amazing stuff.
yeah. I mean, you can stop an epilepsy attack before it starts. I mean, some life changing stuff. And this is
Mhm.
just again all around the electricity that's going on in the brain. Just a fascinating little device up in there.
You'll have to have Jacob on next time so he can nerd out and tell you how it actually works.
How it actually works. This would be now. That would be. I'll have to go and do some study. I'll have to for sure do a little research before I get into a phone call, because I at least would like to have one phrase I can say, which you might go, "Oh,
Well, luckily he's a
um,
professor, so he can teach you
oh,
way
okay."
better
Let's
than I could too anyway.
and
Yeah.
Stephen, that's what the show really is all about. Is about just sharing and learning. And like I was saying before, whoops, get rid of all these banners. Um, sorry, trying to get rid of my banners. Um, hang on, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. Somewhere. Anyway,
Looks like
so
a
I,
good
I
one.
think, yeah, it looks like a good one until you don't want it there, and then it's not so. And then I can't figure out which one it is. Grows counseling. Hmm. Well, there you go. And I think I deleted yours. that's,
That's all
that's the best.
good.
That's my favorite part. There we go. Okay. I've hacked the system now. There we go.
Hey, there it
I hacked
is.
I hacked it back. I wanted to get our names back. It's kind of wrapping up. I'd love to get on again. Yeah, this is what you guys are doing, and maybe it needs a little bit of time and another month or so, and kind of see what the next news is. When's a good time do you think to
Absolutely.
come back? If I put a little
We're gonna
trigger in
close
my
our
file.
yeah, we're gonna close our round the end of this year and end of Q4. So maybe after the new year. Like I'd love to come back in
Okay.
January, tell you where we're at on our we finished our raise, hopefully. And we're moving into the next phase of the company's development, which is gonna be really exciting stuff. Things are gonna happen fast when we get rolling. So
Oh, well, I
um
think when you get the money dropped, yeah, yeah. Especially you've
yeah,
got you've got that budget,
absolutely.
you get the hires that you need, and you start to get the trials going, right? That's
Yep. And then next time, shameless plug here, I've been working on developing a nonprofit where we're
oh,
hiking
great.
mountains to raise money for suicide prevention. We did our first one in 2020, and I've kind of had it on the back burner for a little bit. So I'll have to talk about that next time too.
Oh, absolutely. And for sure, I'll get that. Shoot me a note. I'll get you on the side on that, and I'll make sure it gets in the episode
Cool.
notes. Yeah, it should be for
Awesome.
sure in the
That'd be
episode.
great.
What's the name of it? Maybe just pimp it a little bit for a
It's
second.
called yeah, it's called Summits for Suicide Prevention. We are still in
Great.
like a very infancy stage, but we partner with MAPS, who I mentioned
Okay.
earlier, and we
Yeah.
donate to their MDMA capstone campaign, which is helping
Yeah.
legalize MDMA, and
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
allegedly going to go through FDA approval sometime in next summer.
I
So
heard
pretty
it's on the.
amazing.
I heard it's on the kind of the docket, so to speak.
Hmm. Yeah, the future is now. It's happening fast.
One
So
of
it'd be
my
cool to
one
see
of
once that gets legalized, what people can do with the research once they get their hands on it.
Oh, absolutely. I had Neil Gani on, and Neil's a psilocybin kind of convert, but he's got such a cute story. He's an Indian national, ended up in Silicon Valley, super successful, and super successful by all definitions. But he felt unhappy. He just felt
Yeah.
not happy. he just felt depressed and just, he's like, I had a happy life. I had the Instagram life, but I wasn't happy. And he went to a party one day and this is, like I said, a real Indian techie nerd boy, right? Like a mom, like you could imagine him being a mama's boy, never drank, never smoked, never went out with girls, never did anything. Like he's just a good guy, and did all the right stuff. And somebody said, hey, you look like you need to be happier, and gave him a MDMA gummy at a
Oh, wow.
festival. At a festival, changed his life. Changed his life.
Michael Pollan has a similar story, right, where he wasn't affiliated with any of that kind of stuff, and then it came into his life, and it did so much good, and now he's a poster for this movement. And that's how a lot of the psychedelic movement's been, which has been so cool, right? Like the community that was at the MAPS conference is from so many diverse backgrounds that you wouldn't expect. People being converted to this kind of thinking and approach to medicine. So it's amazing what it's doing to people, which obviously means that it's really working.
It works. I consider myself pretty lucky. Grew up in a time when, that stuff was kind of readily available and accessible in a kind of a, rock concert kind of an environment. And even outside of the concerts. My brother went to school in Boulder in the 80s. So,
nice.
I had come across them before, and going to Grateful Dead concerts and, experimenting, right? Self-medicating. And I do attribute that a lot to my ability to kind of control my own mental health, or at least, self-manage and have a good mental outlook. I mean, the other one was being in sales and being exposed to a lot of good, positive, motivational tapes and self-talk and stuff, because, the world outside, when you're a sales guy selling life insurance, the world outside is not friendly. It's lions and tigers and bears. And you have to have a really strong rooted psyche at the end of it, because every day you're getting smashed.
I think you're so right. And I think the thing you're getting at here is like this holistic approach to our wellness, right?
Yeah.
Where it's, having the tools like maybe psychedelics to help you open up some parts of your brain, but you're mentioning, personal development work, professional vigor. You're mentioning music, which is amazing. A place like Boulder with all the outdoor activity and in that vicinity, like it's really setting on a grand scale to like really build our wellness portfolio, if you look at it that way, for ourselves, like coping skills. It's so many categories of things, which is like one size isn't going to fit all. There's not going to be one thing. We really need to be well-rounded in how we're taking care of ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the fact that there's so many tools coming out, just so much happening in the space. And I feel like I'm in the right place at the right time doing this podcast, because I'm meeting people like you, and I'm just like, okay, wait a minute, what? You're putting a hole in someone's head, you're putting a P-shaped device, and that's going to give them like electrical pulses, and that's crazy. I love it.
The future is now, man. And I will say, like, there's that kind of crazy technology that's coming and happening. There's also tools that we've had for thousands of years that still do so good. Like I'm a yoga teacher in my spare time, whatever little bit I have. There's such power in the breath and basic movement. Like the tools have been around for a long time, and I'm so glad that we have like all these new tools that are coming out. But like, you're never more than a breath away from having a sense of calm and some peace.
Stephen, it's so powerful. A couple of the interviews that I've had with people who talked about they were suicidal at points in their life, right? And really fought off even ideology and just the thoughts. And the message that really struck me at times was people saying, I just needed one more minute. If I could get past this minute, then I could get to the next minute. And I had hope that I could get another minute. That I wasn't going to hurt myself. I wasn't going to do the things that I was thinking about. And I just needed that minute to pass. And man, that box breath, like you said, you're never more than a breath away from getting some, just a little bit of a box breath, just the deep breath, slowly going through the cycle. And there's a minute, you made it.
Yep. 100%. Well said.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. There's so many good tools I've been picking up too, even for my own. I'm coming back here and I'm learning so much now. Even like in my phone, my wake up thing is mindfulness, breath work. When I wake up, I just try to
Yeah.
get into breath work.
Yeah, stay out of your phone. I've
And
tried to never do that, but I'm trying.
it's super hard, but you can do it, and like I said, I think the breath work is the easiest thing because you can just go through that, and at least that's gets you, out of the run up and jump and
We're
grab the
doing it
phone and
anyway.
get, yeah, and then you're doing all
You're
this
doing
other
it
stuff.
anyway. Just focus on the breath
Yeah, you're gonna
and
breathe anyway.
it's crazy. Yeah, you're gonna breathe anyway. Make it intentional for a second.
Make it intentional for a second. Stephen, thanks for being a guest, man. I super appreciate it. Um,
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ken. This was a great conversation. I'm looking forward to the next time we get to chat.
yeah, me too. Hang around for 30 seconds. I got one more commercial to run, and I'll get you on the other side to say goodbye. Um, Thanks
Sounds
everybody
good.
for listening to the show. So and tuning in. Please do give us some comments on whatever platform you're on, Facebook and LinkedIn, Twitter, or YouTube. Well, we're all in all those places. Fantastic. I love this platform, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Yeah, loose, baby.
But we're about to go and make this vessel with these great professionals in public glass. We're not part of the community, but we're from the outer family of glass blowing. Yeah, we're gonna go make a magical giant jar with optic lenses so that if you turn it, it changes all the time. So if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.